Hello once again, and welcome to another edition of the SaskAgToday.com Roundtable. We're joined by the Chief Agricultural Editor of SaskAgToday.com, Kevin Hursh, as well as the Agri-News Director for 620 CKRM Regina, Ryan Young. I'm Doug Falconer, the Agriculture Director at GX94 in Yorkton. And of course, it's the last week, full week of September, and we wanted to first talk about harvest. And I know, Kevin, last time we talked to you, you still had some canola to combine. Have you been able to finish that combining?
Yes, mercifully finished yesterday. A hailed crop that was regrowing that a neighbor swathed for me. It's an incredibly poor crop, but at least it's done and glad to be done because the cross winds today would have had swaths blowing all over the place. So finally done, so it can do some cleanup and put away and get set for maybe some seed cleaning and some fall herbicide applications still coming up. The season is stretched far later, especially for this part of the province, to have harvest still going as October approaches is not the norm we've become accustomed to the past number of years.
And would that be the same for pretty much the rest of the Southwest region from what you've seen?
Yeah, things are getting cleaned up. Some of the stuff that just had too much green, gradually getting picked up and those fields cleaned up. So the vast majority of harvest is now done in the parts of the Southwest that I've seen. But I know as you drive between the Southwest and up to Saskatoon, the further you get across the river and into that country, the last I was there a few days ago, there was still a significant amount of crop out, a lot of it being canola in that case that producers are still waiting on and haven't wrapped up yet.
How about in that Regina area, Ryan? How's the harvest going there?
Things are progressing. We're starting to see a lot more empty fields and stubble. And in fact, there's one field right by Grand Coulee, actually right beside the Cargill canola crush plant. On one of my morning commutes, I saw three combines out on the field getting the crop off. So that's kind of nice to see, and they have it all done. So good to that farmer for getting that one particular quarter section of land done. I also reached out to a few neighbors back home around the Margot area just to see how harvest is going over there. And from one of the guys I chatted with, he said that things were kind of looking average for the most part. And like the crop report was saying, he was focusing on canola. A lot of farmers are focusing on canola at this point. About 40, I believe 42% of canola is harvested at this point from the last crop reports. So he was also taking canola off actually on my quarter section of land that I have. So that's kind of nice to hear and reassuring that he's doing something, by the way. So overall, things are looking pretty good and they're progressing in the right direction.
Yeah, here in the Yorkton area, harvest is a little slower than the rest of the province. In fact, we went out to Roblin, Manitoba for GX94 supper in the field on Wednesday. We were about 6 miles south of Roblin and then about a mile west, and they were combining a canola field there, getting pretty good yields. But we also had reports on from the Manitoba crop report on Wednesday. Farmers at Ethelbert, Manitoba, which is just north of Dauphin, if you know where that is. They had 4 3/4 of an inch of rain in a very short period of time. I think it was about 36 hours. And there were actually videos of the canola swaths floating in the field. So if you can imagine that, floating in the field, some of them floating right across some lower roads and that sort of thing. So that's a real mess. I can't imagine what that's going to be like to try to combine eventually, if at all. So yeah, Manitoba crop report 56% complete. Saskatchewan crop report 68% complete as of this week, heading into next week. But once again, nice weather seems to be holding, so hopefully we'll see some bigger numbers next week. Also wanted to mention that Bunge held a news conference in Regina this week, Ryan, and you had a chance to go talk to them about that. I guess it was the Viterra International Trade Center will be undergoing a name change.
That's right. They announced that it'll now be called the Bunge International Trade Center. Of course, that was necessary following the merger between Bunge and Viterra. So I had a chance to ask a few questions to Bunge Canada CEO Kyle Jaworski about a number of things. With regards to the name change of the center, he said that it's a 10-year deal with Regina Exhibition Association Limited, so they have the naming rights to the whole venue. They got all the branding all over the place in the spots that Viterra used to have the branding. So as soon as you get to the building, the sign before the building, inside one of the halls there, so it's front and center. But the dollar amount wasn't disclosed, so I could imagine that's probably a pretty penny or two per year. A number of things we talked about as well. One of them was the canola crush facility that they have been planning, at least for the last couple of years since I've been here in Regina. They've always been rumored to, be in the planning stage and figuring out whether they want to set up a canola crush plant in the city or not. Kyle said that they're in the middle of a feasibility study to determine the demand for canola, as well as the cost of setting up the facility. They're about halfway done, and he acknowledged that the Chinese tariffs on canola oil, meal, and seed are likely going to play a role into that study. So we'll see how that turns out and whether or not they actually move forward with building it. Like I mentioned before, Cargill has a canola crush facility set up on the west side of Regina, and a joint venture facility between Federated Cooperatives Limited and AGT Foods is on indefinite pause, not because of the China tariffs, but more so of the biofuel policy and political uncertainty with the United States at the time. So we'll see where that goes. And then another thing was just on the merger itself. It'd been a few months since the merger was complete, and Kyle said that the integration has been good for the most part, kind of smooth sailing. So there hasn't been really any job changes or anything like that from his perspective on the business side of things. It's kind of status quo, so that's good. Obviously, the headquarters stays in Regina here for at least 5 years. Bunge is committed to invest in Canada at least $520 million within the next 5 years. And those are part of the conditions set out by the Competition Bureau to have this merger go through. So those are some of the things that we talked about. Last time I talked to him was at Canada's Farm Show, so it was nice to catch up with him on all of these issues.
Kevin, I'm sure you were able to hear all of those interviews that Ryan had with Kyle Jaworski. What's your take on the whole Bunge-Viterra merger and where things are going from here?
Well, when you get the two large entities like that, and you get the whole change in naming, it's taken a while. Market reports coming out. It took them a while before they do say it was coming from Bunge, and then gradually emails addresses started to change and all of that sort of thing. But it seems like it's been, for a major undertaking like that, relatively seamless. Interesting that they're still studying whether a canola crush plant is viable in Regina. I would hate to be doing that feasibility study trying to predict the future of Chinese tariffs and try to predict the future of American biofuel policy to see whether another crushing plant is viable or not. So it'll be interesting to see how that proceeds.
Also, some big news this week. We heard that Northwest Terminal at Unity is proposing to sell as well to Bunge, and that was something you were on top of, Kevin.
Yeah, and I've had a lot to do with Northwest Terminal over the years. They were a member of Inland Terminal Association of Canada, for which I served as executive director for many years, and I would count Jason Skinner as a personal acquaintance and friend. He's the CEO of Northwest Terminal. And just competitive factors and so much competition for grain in that area, and also some shorter crops, especially back in 2021, really put them in a financial bind. They stopped buying grain, keeping their fermentation plant going for industrial and potable ethanol, and that's the part that they will retain as they sell the elevator and the grain assets to Bunge, pending shareholder approval at a meeting coming up. But it's hard to know what assets like that are worth. $27 million is what has been quoted as the price that's being paid. That's actually higher than I thought they might get in this current market situation. And it's also interesting to look, though, that even that 27 million does not pay off all of the debt. The debt is in excess of $40 million. So the ongoing ethanol plant will still be saddled with a fair degree of debt, but will still have a lot better chance of surviving with some of that debt at least paid off.
This week, we also heard the Canadian Canola Growers Association announce that the advance payment program was being rolled out in a new and improved format. Ryan, that was something you followed up on.
Yeah, so it's official that the interest-free portion of cash advance under the advance payments program is increased to $500,000. So, what does that mean for a producer? Well, if you have canola as part of your crop rotation, you get the first $250,000 or up to $250,000 for any commodity eligible under the program, and then an additional $250,000 for canola itself. So that's the new change. The canola growers, they had to wait a little while for the regulations to take effect, which they did as of September 16th. So obviously that's what the third change this year to the interest-free portion. It was 100,000 to begin with, and then up to 250,000, and now it's doubled to $500,000. So, at this rate, we're probably going to reach up to $1 million at some point. But it's good for those producers who are going to be maybe in a bind for cash flow, just given how the canola market is these days. I track the cash prices every day from Bunge's Moose Jaw terminal, and they've been hovering around that $556 a ton range for pretty much a few weeks on end here. So kind of soft, but good nonetheless. But as we know, ultimately, they would like to see market access restored to China, and then they don't have to worry about getting a loan anymore. But in the interim, a good thing.
Kevin, how's your feelings on that? Do you think it's a good thing, or do farmers really want to get more money out of this program?
Well, you can't borrow your way out of financial difficulty, but it can help bridge the gap. I'm surprised that it doesn't apply in the same manner to peas, because peas had 100% tariff into the Chinese market way back when the first tariffs were put on canola oil and canola meal. And peas tend to get lost in the discussion. In some parts of the province, peas might be in the rotation and canola might not be part of the rotation at all. So I'm a little surprised that peas tends to be lost in the conversation. And again, you only can get these interest-free loans up to the inventory that you actually have to back them. So it's not like everybody can do that, but if you have the grain inventory or the crop insurance backing to back what you want for an interest-free loan, it certainly can take out more money. And I think that there will be a big uptick in the applications for the cash advance program, but it doesn't really, at the end of the day, solve the overall problem.
Also, Ryan, we saw this week that the wheat growers, Western Canadian Wheat Growers Association, put out a news release concerned that the Pest Management Regulatory Agency was considering putting a halt to dicamba use on soybeans. You had a chance to follow up on that.
That's right. So the wheat growers, they have a concern about Health Canada and by extension the PMRA, considering, based on the language that I was seeing from Health Canada, restrictions on the use of dicamba. Not necessarily a ban, although I've seen the word ban used in a few news articles, but nonetheless, they have concerns with the changes to the rules and how that chemical is used. For those that don't know, it's a herbicide used for weed control for soybeans and field corn to treat weeds like kochia, for example. But from the president, Gunter Jochum's perspective, he felt that they didn't really have a clear reason as to why they're thinking about doing that and having this review in the first place, other than to maybe think that they're trying to be more in line with the United States. Well, the United States for this year, they banned the use of dicamba, but they're gonna maybe consider reinstating it for next year. based on the study that they did as well, simply speaking. So, other than that, Gunter kind of disagreed with the whole process, considering where he farms in Manitoba, soybeans are a common crop, and dicamba is used quite frequently. So he's concerned that should there be a ban or a restriction on how it can be used, that could have a lot of ramifications and a lot of negative impacts.
Kevin, I know you're not into soybeans where you farm, but obviously, anytime the PMARA starts kind of sticking their nose into things, you can get concerned.
Yeah, and they have a history of coming out with things that are surprising and sometimes troublesome. In the case of dicamba, that's an old product, originally brought out as Banville, so it's been around for a long time. And certainly in the U.S., they had tremendous trouble with it when they developed soybeans that were tolerant to dicamba as well as glyphosate or Roundup. But the dicamba, especially at higher temperatures, tends to really volatilize. You can have drift problems, drifting onto people's yards or gardens, or more importantly, maybe even adjoining crops and wiping out adjoining adjacent crops. And so that was the concern of PMRA in not having being in a soybean growing area. I don't know how much trouble that was causing in Manitoba or southeastern Saskatchewan, where there is a significant acreage of soybeans. But certainly there should be other ways to mitigate that problem rather than putting an out-and-out halt to the use of dicamba on a growing soybean crop.
Other big news this week out of the United States was the fact that New World screwworm is within 70 miles of the U.S. border. It's an issue that's come up in Mexico here over the last few months. Do cattle producers here in Canada need to be concerned about this, Kevin?
I don't think that just the geography of the thing, no. But when you read how nasty screwworm is, if you read some of the reports of how how the worms go into any cut or abrasion on an animal and literally just eat it up slowly if it's not treated, and the mess it is to try to control it, you can see why the U.S. is pretty upset. And even though it's not an issue, I don't think, to cross at any time into Canada, it does show the volatility of international trade, and whether it's New World screwworm or whether it's some disease outbreak, especially when it comes to agricultural products, borders can close just overnight.
And of course, Farming for Health. It's an initiative here in East Central Saskatchewan. It's a bunch of farmers and the agricultural companies in the area get together and they all donate seed and fertilizer and chemical. And then the city of Yorkton donates land. So today, here, Friday, September 26th, the Farming for Health group was combining about 440 acres of canola, and all the funds raised goes to the Health Foundation of East Central Saskatchewan. They use that money to purchase new equipment for hospitals in the area. So I just wanted to give a shout out to those guys. They've raised a lot of money. In fact, over the first few years, I believe they raised $1 million that they set aside to help with the building of a new hospital when that comes to Yorkton eventually. But in the meantime, they've been using the money to buy new farm equipment. So shout out to the Farmers for Health people who are working hard today. And of course, Kevin, you're going to be heading to Yorkton next week.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the Brick Mill Heritage Banquet and get to meet everybody there and be a guest speaker. Save your dinner bun to throw at me if I say something really stupid, Doug, but look forward to being there and look forward to seeing you.
Excellent. And of course, that's next Wednesday at the St. Mary's Cultural Center in Yorkton. Kevin's going to really enjoy the meal. Ryan's smiling because he knows that it's always a great meal at St. Mary's. It'll be pierogies and cabbage rolls and all that sort of thing. So you won't leave hungry. We'll put it that way. So on that note, that'll do it for this week's edition of the SaskAgToday.com Roundtable. On behalf of 620 CKRM Regina Agri-News Director Ryan Young and the Chief Agricultural Editor for SaskAgToday.com Kevin Hursh, I'm GX94 Yorkton Agriculture Director Doug Falconer saying so long until next time.